Rahul. I hope you can hear me and see me. I'd like to send a very warm welcome to all the participants and the guests and speakers today. I'm very honored that the European Commission and its Directorate General Connect, which is a department within the European Commission which is in charge of designing and implementing the digital policy in the European Union, can be represented in this event today. The India Mobile Congress is, of course, a key event for the development of digital economy and society in India and beyond. It's therefore a very important occasion to mark the long-standing, very intense and fruitful cooperation between the European Union and India in the digital sphere. Since many years, the European Union and India have held a dialogue on digital affairs called the Joint Working Group. We are also conducting numerous cooperation projects supported notably by this bilateral standardization project, which is organizing the event today, through a program called Indico for the promotion of single standards at a global level for digital affairs, and also, of course, by the CESE project, which is supported by the European Union. Within this framework, we have been exchanging best practice between the European Union and India, and vice versa, on all digital policy areas. But of course, a specific attention has been given, and an intense cooperation has taken place and continues to take place on mobile communications and standardization aspects which are related thereto, as well as the related aspects which are of key importance, such as the cybersecurity aspects, where we have been exchanging very intensely, notably about the European Union's so-called 5G toolbox, and also about issues like testing and certification. A very fruitful dialogue on all these matters. Within the European Union, the European Commission's President, Mrs. von der Leyen, when she took office in 2019, has put the efforts to make a success of the double transition to a green economy, a green society, and a digital transformation an absolute top priority of her mandate. The European Commission has launched its Digital Decade strategy as a result, through which it sets itself, and through a digital compass, a series of clear numerical targets of where it wants to be in 2030, and also to be a world leader on digital affairs. Digital carries values that is very much at the core of the European Union approach to digital policy. And therefore, it is our key desire to work together with partners around the world, such as India, that share these values. In April 2022, earlier this year, our leaders, Prime Minister Modi, European Commission President Mrs. von der Leyen, at their meeting in New Delhi, have decided to launch the EU-India Trade and Technology Council, a strategic coordination mechanism that will deepen our cooperation inter alia in the field of digital technologies. Now let me turn for a second to 6G. I think it is in a common shared insight in the EU and in India that it is important to launch the work on time, seizing the opportunities offered now to stimulate global convergence. In the European Union, drawing the lessons from the global successes of previous generations of mobile communications, we consider that although we are at the preliminary stage for 6G in the research phase, it'll be crucial to have a widely shared common vision around the globe and a shared common approach towards the deployment of ecosystems. Therefore, we will support international cooperation on research and innovation in the pre-standardization phase, targeting one single global standard to ensure interoperability is key to the global success of all mobile communications and, of course, also of 6G. And in these efforts, we must leverage a robust environment like 3GPP and involve, from the onset, the widest possible industry base. Avoiding fragmentation is key. Therefore, we'll be very happy to actively continue our close cooperation with India and our engagement with all stakeholders, notably through events like today. Thank you so much, and I'm wishing you a very good work today at this workshop, the India Mobile Congress. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tonnie, for your time and your address. I think it's important that the important points that you have raised, that we have been very closely cooperating with India on ICT. The very evident fact is that it's been more than 20 years that we have been engaged in the policy dialogue that happens along with Ministry of Electronics and Department of Telecom. So we are very proud of it, and today we are here to engage with India on this critical topic of standards. So going ahead, I need to also mention here that this session is being organized under the banner of India-EU ICT Standardization Collaboration. This is an EU-funded project which is running since 2015. And two of the main stakeholders of this project are TSDSI and ETSI, that is European Telecommunication Standards Institute. And we have a speaker here from ETSI, Mr. David Baswarthick, who is Director of New Technologies. He's going to give a presentation on ETSI's approach to standardization of innovative technologies, such as reconfigurable intelligent surfaces, RIS, and terahertz. May I invite David now to present himself and give his presentation. Over to you, David. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning. First of all, I hope you can hear me. That's the most important thing. Second of all, I hope you can see some slides on the screen. Could somebody confirm that the slides are visible, please? Yes? No? Okay, I'm sharing the screen. The host has disabled my permission for screen saving. The host needs to enable my ability to share my screen, it says, unless the host would like to show the slides. Okay, well, I only have 10 minutes, so I'm going to start talking without the slides, and you can just look at my face. So my name is David Baswarthick. I work for ETSI, it's the European Telecom Standards Institute. We are one of the 3 ESOs. Should be better. Now, somebody nod their head and tell me you can see the screen. Yes, thank you. So here we go again. So today I'm going to present the European approach to research, innovation, and technology capture. I only have 10 minutes, so I'm going to keep it quite focused. So first of all, quickly, I'll present ETSI. ETSI is one of the 3 ESOs. We are over 30 years mature. We have 900 plus member organizations from the operator, regulator, observer, vendor category. What I want to pull out here is that we actually have over 14% of our members come from the research and academia profile, which means we have a large number of researchers, students, and lecturers actually present as members of ETSI. And that makes a very large innovative input to our work. We actively encourage the onboarding of research and innovation into standardization. It's part of our lifeblood. And we do this in 3 main areas. One is we reach out to the researchers. So we reach out to universities, to research projects, to researchers, be that in member states, be it that in countries, be it that in continent, in Europe, or in globally. We'll actually reach out to platforms such as Horizon Europe, SNSJU, 6GIA, and Network Europe. These are all research platforms and projects under the Horizon 2020 or Horizon Europe research funding. We also work with individual projects, so such things as the HEXA-X, which is a very big 6G flagship project in Europe, Next G Alliance in North America, 16G globally, and IOWN in Japan. And we also reach out to individual universities and academic representatives. What we also do is we produce a technology trend roadmap, which I'll talk to you about in the next slide. And finally, what we do, we bring all of that together, linking research, linking technology, and building new areas of work in ETSI, and then reaching out to our global partners afterwards. So quickly back to the ETSI Technology Radar. So this is a white paper which was published in April 2021. We're in the process of updating it now, and it should be republished in April 2023, so 2 years later. Over that time, we've moved from 10 major ICT technology trends to 20 technology trends. So already we can see we're doubling the effort. In the initial version, which came out in 2021, we could see the big lines for technology evolution over the next five years were seen as mobile network evolution, so 3G, 4G, 5G, 6G, 7G, 12G. artificial intelligence, machine learning, autonomous networks, and self-synthesizing networks. Everything to do with cybersecurity, privacy, trust, and cybersecurity. Distributed ledgers and blockchain, dynamic data, which also can be seen as semantic interoperability, big data, augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality, the Internet of Things evolving towards the Internet of Senses, the Internet of Skills, the Internet of Services, everything relating to quantum compute and quantum networking, including quantum key distribution, and then autonomous things, which can be robots, cars, unmanned systems, drones, and HAPS. In the 2023 version, we're already working on some new areas. So we're seeing photonics as a very important area. Sub-terahertz and terahertz communication, as you move above millimeter wave, you get into a very interesting frequency range. Reflective intelligent services, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. The whole frequency range of optical wireless communications, LiDAR, OCC, Li-Fi, VLC. Non-terrestrial network, be that tropospheric, so UAVs and HAPS, or actually satellites from CubeSat, LEOs, MEOs, and geostationary orbits as well. Focus on moving to the cloud, to the edge, to the distributed edge. As you also move up towards the higher frequency, you have the concept of being able to communicate over a network and then sense with the network, both for location, materials, and also for absolute clocking as well. The evolution of modern computing towards quantum computing, towards neuromorphic computing, in addition with the changed structures of unified network, compute and communicate networks is an interesting area as well. The next generation devices, so what will the next generation phones be, the next generation connected glasses, but also what will be the next generation interfaces. That is very interesting. How will we interact with data in the future? And I think one of the most important topics is the topic of green, sustainability, low power, material recycling, resource optimization. Probably worth taking a little bit of time on this slide. So this is the ETSI view of 6G. It's not the 3GPP view. It's not the European view. It's the ETSI view of 6G. And we recognize that everybody is talking about 6G. It's very exciting. People are actually talking about 6G earlier than they did with 5G 10, 12 years ago. It's important to say that we're at the vision and the research phase. We're researching the candidate technology, which may be eventually adopted in beyond 5G or 6G, but we don't know if it will actually make up 6G. There are a number of vision documents saying this is what 6G will do, this is what 6G is, but to be honest, nobody can really define what 6G will be in 10 years' time. We imagine that we will see some 6G early standardization in 3GPP at around 2026, 2027. And that date is variable. Those will be initial study items in SA1 most probably. Then we're imagining also that 6G and 5G will evolve in very parallel tracks over the next 10 years for sure. 5G isn't going to go away and 6G isn't going to replace immediately 5G. So in ETSI, we only speak about research of pre-standards work for candidate 6G technologies. And here you can see I've just extracted one of the slides from the European Commission showing the approximate timescales, which links into the work being done by the ITUT and ITUR. And we can see 6G services, really early services, aren't expected before the year 2030. They may be brought forward, as we saw with 5G, with early drop. We hope that they will be delivered on time, a good solid package of 6G deliverables coming out of 3GPP. So when we say we don't know what 6G could be, well, we have to guess. So with all these white papers looking at what 6G could be, we come out with a number of common technologies. And these include sub-terahertz, native AI or AI native deployed in the network, reconfigurable intelligent surfaces, integrated non-terrestrial networks, bringing satellites into the fully into the architecture of the network, integrated sensing and communication, energy efficiency, very, very important, and distributed massive MIMO and other such clever radio evolutions. But these are simply candidate technologies, which may actually arrive in 6G in 10 years' time. 8 years' time. So today, ETSI seeks to promote a one global standard for 6G. We don't want to see multiple global standards for 6G, and this will be the theme of the panel later on. And we're working with all of ETSI's partners and the 3GPP partners to avoid any risk of standards fragmentation. Quickly to talk about two technologies. So I mentioned earlier that RIS, Reconfigurable Intelligent Surfaces, is one candidate technology for either late 5G or early 6G. And a year ago, we set up this study group, ISG RIS, looking at how, so basically extracting the research from lots of European research projects on RIS, several UK, United Kingdom research projects on RIS, bringing the people and the concepts together, putting them into an ISG, which is a standardization group, and then saying how they can develop the concept with an aim of having this work fed into 3GPP as quick as possible. The groups have been in existence for a year. They're currently over 35 members with 2 participants. Those are non-ETSI members who come in to actually participate in the work. And they're working on 3 deliverables, which you can download from the site below. Latest news, we also mentioned in the candidate technologies for 6G that moving beyond millimeter wave and up to terahertz would be interesting. So to that end, in September, the Director General of ETSI approved a new ISG for sub-terahertz modeling activities. This has just been approved, and the activity will begin in December 2022. So again, we're going to see these fundamental technology building blocks, which may be used in 6G, being developed in ETSI as standardized early pre-standardization enablers. Which leads us to the next question: what could be the next big thing? So we've already ticked a box on terahertz. We've already ticked a box on reconfigurable intelligent surfaces. But what about sustainability, energy efficiency, material management, short life cycles and such things? What about fully integrated non-terrestrial networks? What about sensing and communication networks? So with our members, we're now working, as we've done terahertz and RIS, we're working with our members to see what's the next technology, which is mature enough to have pre-standardization work done in ETSI. With that, I think I probably hit my 10 minutes on the head. So thank you very much. If we have time for any questions, I'm happy to take them. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We will save the questions for the panel discussion where you are also participating. So that will be a more better opportunity to explain also more in detail beyond this presentation what ETSI is doing beyond and from 5G onwards in standardization game, in engaging with stakeholders from different verticals and on different use cases as well. So with this, I'll move on to introduce the panel, which is going to discuss on a thematic topic, which is evolution of global standards from 5G onwards. To start with, let me introduce the moderator of the session, who is joining us virtually, Mr. Aleksandar Bratic. He's the project leader of the EU-India ICT Standardization Collaboration Project. Then on the panel, we have Mr. Manoj Gurnani. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. Head of Strategy and Technology in Nokia. We have Mr. Jan Peisa, I hope I spelled it correctly, Head of Connectivity Networks, GFTL Standards and Industry Initiatives, Ericsson. Then we have Mr. Manish Gangey, Head of R&D, Bharti, Airtel. Then we have David Baswarthick, once again from ETSI. And finally, Dr. Sreenath Ramanath, Head R&D, Lekha Wireless. Welcome to you all, sir, to the panel discussion. And to take the proceedings forward, I'll invite Aleksandar to take the floor. Before that, I'll also mention that we are not reading the bios. We are putting it on the slides to make the discussions more and to have more content in discussions than consuming the time in bios. So please have a look at the bios online. Over to you, Aleksandar. Thank you.
Thank you, Harun. Hello, everybody. My name is Aleksandar Bratic. I'm glad to host a panel discussion on evolution on global standard from 5G onwards, and to be among these great leaders from different companies, market players, and organizations. The first topic I would like to cover, the next generation of global standard for mobile communications, is going to further transform value sectors of the industry and society. And in order to do so, it is essential to ensure that those standards deliver against the requirements of those sectors. What are the specific steps that you foresee as necessary to engage with the vertical sectors? Mr. Manoj.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I think let me start with a recent study which was conducted by Bell Labs, Nokia Bell Labs. And that study basically talks about the digitization journey, and it covers various industries. So the first category really is the digitally aware industries. We talk about media, telecom, finance, banking, insurance. You know, these are the industries which have already seen the benefits of digitization, and they are a little bit ahead of the curve. And when I talk about the benefits, these benefits would be in terms of, say, safety, productivity, the efficiencies which would accrue. The second set of industries which the study talks about is the physical industries, right? So we talk about the factories, mining, agriculture, so on and so forth. Now the objective why I'm sharing this study is that for all this journey to happen successfully, the journey of digitization, it's very important that the underlying infrastructure, which is the networks, I think that's up to the mark. And that can be up to the mark only when you build the network on the global harmonized standards. And when we talk about 5G, it largely focuses on the enterprise applications. And so 5G is not only telecom. I mean, 5G is about healthcare, it is about automobiles, it is about agriculture, everything and anything which you can talk about. So it's important that ICT industry, which is the creator of technology, and the verticals, which are the consumers of the technology, they are all brought together. And there are forums, for example, 5G Asia, which is the 5G Alliance of Connected Industries, 5G AA. These are the forums which kind of bring together both the consumers of the technology and the creators of the technology together. I mean, if the participation is richer and more pronounced, I think it is something which is going to benefit all of us.
Thank you. Janne, can you give me your view on this question?
Yes, I will very much echo the taking the learnings from the 5G approach. So at the beginning of 5G, we had a fairly difficult period when we were trying to make sure that all the different verticals have a way of bringing in their requirements into our connectivity networks. And then we created forums like 5G AA and 5G ICIA. So I would really think that we have to continue leveraging the existing forums. We have to really make sure that discussions that we take outside the standardization forum. So we have to make sure that we have the discussions in the setup where the vertical industries feel more comfortable participating, and then take those consensus inputs to bring them into standardization at slightly later point of time in order to make sure that we have global standards in the end.
Thank you. Manish, you're from Bharti article. What is your standing point?
Yeah, the way I look at it is ourselves as the the intermediary for the technology to take it to the consumers, right? And if I look at it, India as one of the beneficiary, few sectors in India really have an opportunity to be brought up in terms of the technology adoption, right? And education, healthcare, agriculture, right? These are some of the sectors which are really have been falling behind in terms of the adoption of the technology. Even though, the 5G and the use cases that we're seeing around, right? They are focused on, how the technology will play out. But the important thing is that, have we done enough in terms of making things simple for those adoption, making things easier for these sectors to really understand the technology and in the very simple terms. I think there is work to be done on those. I don't think we are talking about strictly in terms of the standards, but really applying those standards in making sure that these get adopted rather expeditiously.
Yes, indeed. David, can you please give me your opinion?
Yeah, initially in 5G and even more as we move towards 6G, there's going to be more digitization of other industries. In 5G, we've already seen digitization of industry, of manufacturing, of automobile, of automotive, integration of satellites. And these have been reflected inside 3GPP by MRPs, market representation partners, where 3GPP, so standardization, talks to the fora where these people meet. It's important to do that because these customers, these vertical customers, have specific requirements on their connectivity. So you need to know exactly, what are their parameters, what latency is required, what reliability is required for the automotive industry, for the manufacturing industry. So I think very much reaching out to the fora of the communities that you want to address. In 5G, it was already done. In 6G, it's going to become essential because 6G will be used to connect supposedly everything. So when you're starting to connect supposedly everything, you need to know how to collect the requirements of every community, of every industry, of every vertical. So more and more integration with these fora where people come together and say, these are the requirements for online gaming, for health, for for maritime. Very important to build these relationships and then integrate their requirements into the standard from the beginning. So get that in the stage one of the standards. So very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Lekha Wireless, Mr. Sreenath, how do you see engagement with the vertical sectors?
So I look at this from a technology point of view. So what happens is at this point of time, 5G and 6G, they are somewhere beyond the midpoint. And then a lot of use cases are coming out into the picture. And as well as what use cases we see depends specifically on let's say the geography and sometimes it's kind of localized. So what happens is the kind of use cases you see in, for example, Europe would be quite different from what you could see in India or something like other countries. So one of the ways it stands out is one is basically depending on the use cases, and then when a large population is involved in the creation of technology, and then the standardization aspects are how do you really make it possible? So like say, there are innovations, there are thoughts, and there are so many things. Like for example, some time back, one of the speakers told that how things have evolved in ETSI. So we need to have some similar approaches here, which makes it simple enough to contribute to this, let's say, innovative ideas, which can go into the global stands as well as bring the local things also into the world. So that is what I think.
Okay, I thank you very much. So since 3G, we have achieved to create single global standard for mobile communication with this global footprint increasing even more with 4G and 5G. Do you see current geopolitical context as an obstacle to deliver such global standards in the future? Let's hear what Nokia is thinking about that. Mr. Manoj.
Thank you. The role of regions, active region standardization is extremely important for two reasons. I mean, it kind of ensures that the needs of all the regions are taken care of before you formulate the global standards. So it's very important that all the regions are active when we are doing this standardization exercise. It's extremely important in my view. And in the end, I think whatever will come out will ensure that, it's leading to the economies of scale. I mean, if you talk about country like India, India is a fiercely cost competitive market. And how can I realize the economies of scale? Unless and until I have the global standards, I cannot realize the economies of scale. And if I don't realize the economies of scale, I'll never be able to reach those cost points. So therefore, very, very crucial. You mentioned about, I think the biggest success story of global standards has been 4G. That was accepted by one and all. Throughout the world, there was only LTE, right? So that's the biggest success story. I mean, if you step back and if you look at 3G, I mean, it had its own too many variants and too many regional flavors. And precisely because of that reason, it could not achieve the success which it was supposed to. So to sum up, I think the role of active regional players will be extremely crucial.
Okay, thank you. Janne, how do you in Ericsson see the situation with the global context and deliver of global standards?
So for the 6G, I think we have seen an extremely high amount of regional initiatives. So unlike the earlier generations, like 3G, 4G, even 5G, we now have regional initiatives from almost all the regions of the world already active. We had the European starting with ETSI-TSDSI, we had the Chinese starting IMC 2030 promotion group, and we even had the US creating Next Alliance. And we have seen similar initiatives in Korea and Japan, and we are even discussing setting up a 6G program in India. So we are in a situation where all the regions are having a setup where they can do 6G research. And if you look at David's timeline for the 6G, this is really the peak of the research, and we already have these pre-standardization forums in place. So the risk of the global divergence is something that I think is it's not something we can ignore. So it's really important that we work together in trying to bring all these regional initiatives under one global umbrella, and hopefully we can do that. Since if we fail that, then we will enter the situation that we had for 3G, where we had multiple competing standards. We had the CDMA-based standards, and we had the wideband CDMA-based standards. And even for the 4G, we had WiMAX that tried to enter the wide area communication domain. And at that point of time, it becomes a question of scale. So which is the system that manages to get the maximum number of scale? And it will lead into a situation where we have multiple different technologies deployed. It will lead into a situation where we have competing investments that are not going to take us towards global connectivity, but are simply diverting the efforts on the market. So it's something that we need to manage. And maybe to say one more thing on how I think it's best managed. I think the best way of doing that is to avoid all the triggers that might give the impression that one of the regions is moving in their own direction. So we should really avoid the situation where we have a formal STO doing too early 6G work. And I know that's in the North America, the Next Alliance, it is associated with ATIS, even though it is a separate organization. But I think that is a very, very dangerous setup, because it does give the impression that now there is a regional standardization organization that is driving regional initiatives and not trying to create global standards. So the best would be to follow the model that we have set up, both in Europe and in China, where we have the research projects in Europe with ETSI-TSDSI, in China the IMC 2030 promotion group, that are decoupled from the formal STOs. And that then avoids the situation where we are unfortunately thinking that one region is aiming for regional standards is a global standard. Having said that, I think currently the industry is very much aiming towards one global standard. I think I do not see really any industry player that is driving towards divergency, but the geopolitical situation is difficult, and we have to do everything we can to avoid creating divergence in the market.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. What Manish from Bharti Airtel think about global standards and geopolitical situation?
Yeah, the geopolitical question that we have not answered, none of us have. We've been avoiding it, right, conveniently. But I must say that, this is a challenging times, right? This is something that a lot of us have not seen in our lifetimes. Very extraordinary situation that has been going on. I've seen some sort of, the conversations that is taking place in different organizations. For example, in Oren Alliance, we have had scenarios where, because of the situation that is developing, right, a certain amount of contributions are not happening from different, countries, right? I think, while it is important that, we address the situation that has been developing and condemn what is right and what is wrong, we cannot stop contributing into developing standards just because a certain set of people are there in the room, right? My personal view is that there has to be a situation, there has to be a arrangement that we have to figure out where the standard development activities do not get stalled for reasons which are political. End of the day, all the standardization bodies are, scientific bodies. The whole objective is to develop the technology for the whole mankind, right? And in that scenario, if you stall things, I think it's not good. And you never know how long these situations will exist. So there have to be mechanisms that we need to really work on to see how do we make sure that standardization activities, technology development activities do not suffer because of the geopolitical situations.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Sreenath from Lekha Wireless, how do you see this question?
Continuing from what my colleague here told. So basically the approach of standardization is so broken down into yeah. So basically the way I see that like okay, things can work out is like, for example here in the current kind of consortium that we are having, like it's a combination of an exhibition plus let's say an event where we are discussing standardization both. So somewhere where we are actually displaying what is happening, at the same time also thinking of what should happen in future. So this kind of things like actually exposes even so basically the government has to be a key player in making sure that like okay things come upfront. So a lot of people from these government agencies and bodies to participate in this kind of things, and then from there it proliferates. Like okay, so they are the okay they can go okay they can bring in a change. Okay, bring in a change where like the scientific bodies, academics, and also private companies can kind of participate. So, like to build something large, like okay, there should be a contribution from all participants. Like okay, where like some big companies and then academics and all these things. So, in this case, like okay, creating such kind of awareness, like okay, there such kind of things are there, and we should actually all join to contribute something, and actually demand from the like okay, bureaucracy or whatever, like okay, that this thing should be enabled is a way where things can actually get into the picture. Then at a higher level, like okay, once it comes like an awareness, like okay, so how, for example, if I look back into the academics, like in India, like how people compete to get into the best institutes inside India and outside world, just the way that mindset should change in people. Like okay, I should bring in something like where I should be proud of, where my country should be proud of. So this kind of thinking can make it change, and there should be a way that this can be enabled. So So that is how I see like okay, starting from the basics like okay, bottoms up approach can make a big difference, and then it can eventually contribute to like evolving technology.
Okay, thank you very much. And the last one is David. This disappeared from the image. Hello, David. Can you hear us? Unfortunately, who was keen to speak about this topic. Here we have. Hi, David, again. Can you close this second question with the geopolitical context?
Sure. So standardization is what I do. So we think about standardization, fragmentation, and convergence all the time. Clearly, the success of the mobile phone and the mobile network has been the fact we've had a single global standard, which enables my phone to connect in Berlin, and fly to Taiwan, and then come to Australia independently and interoperably. We need to maintain this for the future. As more and more services will become dependent on 5G and 6G connectivity, it's important that things work seamlessly with the correct levels of reliability and interoperability. So we mustn't encourage the market to allow multiple global standards. There is a geopolitical aspect, and we won't go into that. There's a technical aspect, and we can go into that. And also there is an evolution aspect. So the standards we wrote for 2G, which were basically paper or PDF or Word, probably won't be the standards that are needed for 6G in 10 years' time or in 8 years' time. With the advent of AI and ML, the standards need to be written differently. With the cloudification and virtualization of networks, much more effort is being made in coding and software. So the standards for 6G will probably integrate quite a lot of AI and ML, machine learning, and also have a lot more code. So somebody mentioned ORAN earlier on, but this is a logical evolution of the way the industry will go. So we need to ensure that framework standardization made in 3GPP, open source standardization made in other organizations actually work closely together and converge. We don't want to see competition or divergence. Similarly, with the work that we're doing in ETSI 4 terahertz and RIS, this is a way to collect outcome of research and make it mature enough to be able to be consumed by 3GPP. It's not to be in competition to other regions. It's to make sure that the research, which is coming out of the UK, Germany, France, Spain, out of Europe as well, is mature and then can be fed to 3GPP in 4 to 5 years' time, and then hopefully accelerate the standardization of beyond 5G, 6G. So in ETSI, we really are all about avoiding fragmentation, appeasing global politics, and ensuring that we have a single global standards for the future mobile network. Thank you.
Thank you, David. We are running a little bit late behind the schedule, but let's go on. It's a very interesting discussion. 5G and beyond will see development of the privately operated networks. Do you see the current standards offer as sufficient to ensure that public and no public networks will exist without interfering with each other, or do you think that there are more topics for standards to address to avoid any problems in that area? And if yes, what are the topics? What people from Nokia, Mr. Manoj, think about that?
So private networks actually are a big part of 5G standards. We all know that. Network slicing and so many other features which we keep talking about, they will be the key highlights of private networks. But having said that, private networks and public networks will coexist, and they'll coexist peacefully. If you talk about the standards per se, a lot of use cases and the features which were in release 16 and 17, they have been standardized, keeping in mind the enterprise use cases. And even going forward, you talk about release 18, there are a lot of use cases pertaining to, say, autonomous vehicles, drone use cases, they have been, formulated keeping in mind purely the private network use cases. So to sum up, I think both will coexist, and the standards will ensure that both the requirements are duly taken care of.
Thank you. Janne, what do you think?
Yeah, in the interest of time, I know that this is a topic that we have been addressing in standardization, especially in 3CPP for quite some time. So I do think we have the specifications in place. What we are lacking though is practical experience for commercial deployments. I think once we start to have that experience, then it's time to see on what are the potential next things that we would need to improve in standards. I'm sure there is work to be done, but we don't quite know what that is yet.
Okay, thank you, Janne. Manish?
The way I look at it on the private and the public networks, right, is the access part of the network is pretty sorted out, right, because it's all spectrum driven. The spectrum is allocated and it is well distributed and administered, right? So interference between a public and private network, I don't see that would become a challenge as long as some of the rules that each of the countries are framing are allowing these to peacefully coexist, right? The piece that we will have to really look at, from their coexistence perspective is that how do they interact with each other? Is there a need for them to start to interact at some point of time? There are concepts of slicing that Manoj talked about that we have built into the standard, and the slices can be, running on the same public or the private network, depending upon, how do we want them to interact. These are some of the considerations that we will have to really learn from the practical scenarios that when we get to start to the deployment phase and what issues that we will end up with. We will have to really quickly go back to the drawing board and see if we need to define some rules of engagement on handling those aspects. But as Manoj said, right, 16, 17 and 18, there have been significant amount of work that has been done to make sure that they can coexist. But I would say that we really have to see when the implementations begin, how the things pan out. We'll have to keep a watch on that.
Okay. The next speaker, I would like to announce that we are running out of our time. The next to answer this question is Sreenath, and I will invite you to tell one or two sentences for closing as a closing notes for this panel. Okay, so Sreenath, please.
So on the private and public networks, so one of the things that usually would come into existence is basically some, it's like kind of a geopolitical based. So one should be willing to have a easier mechanism to license and regulatory stuff for managing the public-private networks. And also, like, okay, it should be based on like kind of use cases. For what reason one is going to build the, use a private network for? That also becomes important. If it is for something which is important for security, some aspects of it may be like, okay, it should be all based on the kind of incentives that one can derive. So having a different kind of structure. Of course, from a technology point of view, like I think the interference is the biggest thing that one needs to understand and handle. Okay. So yeah, it again requires a kind of bond between the technologies and the policy creators to manage this in a proper manner. And standardization has to also take into view that like, okay, there is some amount of flexibility here, like, okay, which can help things to evolve and achieve this. So, yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you. So let's go to closing
Alexander,
notes.
if I may
David,
just
please.
intervene, we are short on time, and I think it's time to call it a wrap. But before I do it, thank you so much for the speakers in the panel discussion. Before I call off the panel discussion, I have one last question, taking the liberty of my position here, standing here. And that specific question is to Dr. Sreenath Ramanath. You have been an active member of TSDSI, and as a startup, I really want to understand, I mean, maybe it will be useful for the audience as well, that we have been talking, you have already shared the benefits of standards for everyone. Do you foresee any kind of risk for the startups to participate in the standards where established companies are already collaborating? Thank you.
Right, so it's not easy to kind of get into this mode. But what also happens is like startups happen because of some innovative ideas. Somebody thinks differently and then like, okay, wants to experiment, take risk, begin something. That's how like startups form. And here like it's quite, for example, if you just look at, for example, IMC itself here, you see there are so many companies like trying to push ideas. But you can also see like a lot of established companies already, showing prototypes and products. So eventually ideas come actually. Like for example, just to give an example, like for example, we all talk about 6G. We talk about localization as an example where you use radio waves to kind of know the environment of the user. But recently, like for example, in my company, we have come with some idea where this idea was, we were not calling it as localization or sensing, but we were calling it as a learning-based environment sensing mechanism. Okay. Interestingly, this kind of ideas, like being a small company or setup, it's very hard to kind of push it into the standards convincing, like okay, the already established limits. But that is where you need to fight the battle. Like, the startups have to kind of grow. You need to take your idea, you need to push it, and for that actually TSDSI kind of things actually help you there. Like, okay, you face, you said you put your idea, you see how it floats, you get more confidence, then like, okay, you bring it along to make it happen. Right? So slowly we are seeing like, okay, some things like this happening. I'm quite sure like a large, the big players will definitely contribute. But it's also like, okay, small companies with their novel ideas are slowly starting to make a difference. And this will go a long way in, a very good kind of an ecosystem with startups and large players. And at the same time, like some very established standardization organizations like ETSI and like, let's say, developing standardization organizations, TSDSI to kind of grow up and then have a more harmonized like design and development of things. That's what I see. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sreenath. It's wonderful to have you here. And finally, I would like to thank all our panelists and the speakers who have, spent so much of time. We have gone beyond the clock for a session.